the actual main segment. I don't know how we're going to top that, if I'm being honest. That's so good.
Actually, when I really think about it, it's just an extendant of that conversation because breaking down the numbers, we're talking about numbers, right? Numbers. Data, tech. Yeah, so it's an extension of our Q&A kind of, right? We're breaking down the numbers. There's always that underlying theme that we're going to talk about. So we'll continue our digital detective mission into the craft brew world.
Yeah. How do you feel? Do you feel like the breweries and places you've worked at use their data to make good sound decisions?
That is a loaded question. Do they use well-known POS systems, purchase operating systems like Arrived or Toast? Yes.
Okay.
Were they using them to their fullest potential? Probably no.
Yeah.
I love numbers. I love doing a good spreadsheet. Just something about really getting into those lines and formulas. But no. Yeah. No, but I don't think that they were utilized on their best behalf. Mm-hmm. That's just because I can't see anymore. So that's the point. That's what we want to talk about. Yeah. Is so I never managed in a brewery, right? I've been a beer tender or a bartender, and so of course you're the front of the line. These are the people you're face to face with the guest customer experience, right? They're there for you, and you want to know that they have their suggestions, what kind of beers that they like, what kind of beers that they're purchasing, merch, events, etc. Yeah. Right. Bar tabs, that's a big thing, right? Price. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say no, not to their full effect. That's okay. My long-winded answer.
So the Brewers Association just launched. I think it came out like last month. Kind of specs on customer data via Arrive, the POS system.
I'd love to read that.
Yeah, so we need to tap into that more and get into more specs. It'll be a different episode. But kind of general high levels, there's going to be a ton of value that come out of it, and I'm hoping a lot of breweries can learn different ways they can utilize their data to, quote and unquote, start running their business as a business, not as a hobby. As we talked about, it's getting saturated, doing things well. This is a piece of doing it well is utilizing your numbers and doing what's good for your business. And I would say one of the best ways you can utilize your numbers is picking out what to fill your draft list with.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you, so from a manager perspective.
It's one of the easiest ways to see what your customers are buying, how quickly are they purchasing, what sizes, are they getting it to go, are they just getting it in tasters, like there's a lot of really good aspects that you can learn and then kind of work that into your brewing schedule, right? Like why run out of your best-selling beer?
That seems really obvious to me. You really think that they're not using that? Or maybe you can give a percentage of like that. To me, that just seems super obvious, right? Well, this is what is selling, so this is what I'm going to sell. It is like basic 101 supply and demand.
Yeah, I think, again, if you're running it as a business, it is 101.
I got you.
But now if you're running it as a hobby and you're a brewer that likes to brew specific kinds of beers, and unfortunately, I feel like sometimes your top selling beer isn't the best beer that your brewery likes to brew, or as an establishment, maybe isn't what you necessarily want to be known for. So you just kind of don't brew it. And again, that's fine.
Doesn't that affect the numbers?
In my opinion, yes. So again, if you just want to do it as a hobby and kind of just brew it, you want to brew and be happy with that. And if you're busy, you're busy. If you're not, you're not. It's like a lot of things. Like you can definitely do it that way. And there's nothing wrong with it. It just depends on what your goals are. And if you're not meeting your financial goals, here's ways to look at the numbers to help meet different financial goals. Would be kind of the best way, I would say.
A ton of sense.
Yeah, to break that into a little bit more logistics. Kevin just got back from one of the breweries in Arizona that exclusively just did sours.
Sedona, right?
Sedona, yeah. And a bunch of people were previously were like asking for IPAs and like, oh, it's supposed to be better for IPAs. And they're like, fine, guys, like we're proving we can brew these really incredible beers. But yes, sure, we'll like show we can do IPAs as well.
Yeah.
And they got busier and the IPAs sell well. And it's not that their farmhouse ales and their sours aren't doing well, but they did get busier because they started brewing what people were asking for.
That kind of goes back to our brew news of the day. Why did Sam Adams change their recipe? Why did Fat Tire change their recipe, right? Because it's more of a mainstream beer,
Yep.
right? And if you're, again, it just makes so much sense. If your audience wants a hazy or they want it West Coast,
Yeah.
brew them.
And
That would make sense to me.
And what's funny is those probably
I'm just a beer
became
tender.
initial mainstream beers because it was a style of beer that people wanted.
Makes total sense.
Right? Like,
right?
so now it just changed.
So
right?
maybe you charge a little bit more for the specialty beers, right? People are coming in specifically using your example of that Sedona brewery.
Yeah.
Or Trace Fontaine, whatever it might be. And you can get away with some really good quality IPA on good prices, and you're going to sell a shit ton of it, maybe.
Yep.
If that's what the people want.
If that's what people want.
Sorry. That just never really made sense to me. I'm glad you brought that up because it just feels like such an obvious answer.
Yeah. You would think it is, but I mean, I managed at a place that broke down the numbers to the COO and to the head brewer about how quickly one of the top selling beers was selling out, how quickly it was going into goes, and how quickly it was in pints and mugs for our mug clubbers. And they just straight up said they didn't want to have it on all the time.
Didn't give a shit.
Did not give a shit. And I was like, well, we have people constantly asking for it, and we have people coming in the doors, and when they see it's not on, are leaving, and they're like, nah, they'll come back. And I was like,
but do they,
or
right?
they're not.
Right? Especially now, and to go back, my favorite quote is from the Brewers Association. What's his name? Anyway, they
Watson.
said, growth is no longer as rapid or assured as it was in the past. So how can you say, well, I don't care. Walk out the door.
Yeah, depends on where your priorities are, you know? I mean, and I get it, like brewing wasn't art. And it is an art.
It totally isn't. Yeah.
It's totally an art. But again, it depends on if you want to continue being
business or a hobby,
a starving artist, or a thriving business.
Ooh.
Right? Like you can do both. Especially places that have 10, 15, 20 taps. Just do a percentage, right? Like if you have 20 taps, say keep 8 of them that are consistent. They're the styles people want, and a couple that are always the same beers on, because consistency is what brings people back. And your numbers can prove that to you.
Yeah.
When you have a specific like beer on and your numbers are consistently busier, this shouldn't be this hard to like make this connection. It just depends on if you care about it, right?
Yeah.
Like depends on if that's the road you want to go down.
Yeah, fair.
So
personally, I like eating, but that's just me. And taking vacation.
Yeah. And so another good way you can use your numbers is for staffing.
Oh, sure.
How many people do you need on? Maybe like affect your hours a little bit. Kind of how much money do you bring in on a daily basis per bartender is a way you can use some of those numbers. Kind of get an idea of how much staffing you need at a regular time.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think those are kind of like the biggest ways. I'm excited to read this article, see what other points they tap into. Looking at tip numbers, a really awesome comment on that's kind of how they use to determine staff morale, was if the tips started going down, then they'd go in and start, without like necessarily talking, like see how the place looked. Usually, no one likes cleaning a bathroom, so tips are down, bathrooms don't look good, cleaning isn't done well. Like it's a good indicator maybe you don't have happy crews, and that's a really powerful way to use the numbers. And then additional aspects to learn about your business. Okay. Use those numbers to kind of kickstart that way to run your business better.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I never. It makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have equated a dirty bathroom to not happy. I guess I've always just thought of that as like a level of indifference. But again, if I walk into a place and the shitter's shitty and full of shit, I definitely don't want to go in there, right? But I didn't equate that to a shitty attitude.
Yeah. Indifference is a shitty attitude.
But it makes sense, right? Like, depending on how you want to look at numbers, it's not just a number perspective. It's also a quality of work-life balance even, right? Like
numbers don't have to be all of it. Use those numbers to guide you, right?
Yeah, sure.
Guide you in different ways.
Another thing you kind of brought up, you briefly brought up like a mug club or a loyalty program as a means of something maybe these Arrive data sheets are going to tell a story about. Are you going to be able to track your regulars more, like that customer data? And that's a huge and large topic in itself about your data being out there and how much a business knows about you or the internet, right? Like, let's be honest. We put a lot of information out there, so it makes sense a lot of our information is out there. But if I'm a regular at a place, how am I being taken care of?
I think viewed. I think there's always been a piece I've been not as impressed with some of the systems, and I get why, because it's personal identifying information. So I get where it's a bit of a gray area, but I would also want to know if a regular has kind of stopped coming in as often, and then why, right? Like, how can you reach back out to them? Like, did you lose them? Is it something you did?
Did they move?
Did they move? Is it just something going on in their life, right? Like, if you have staff, it's so easy, unless you have a regular that like comes in every particular day and basically the same person's bartending those days. It's really easy to all of a sudden go months without really realizing they haven't been there, because maybe you had a shift off, or maybe they only sometimes come in on Wednesdays. And, oh, no, you had the last couple Wednesdays off because you were on vacation. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, man, I haven't seen that person in a while. And it's like been like 3-4 months. I just had someone come up to me the other day and was like, oh, you're not at Resolute anymore? Or, I just had somebody come up to me the other day.
I was like, ah!
I just had someone come up to me the other day and was like, hey, you're not at like the brewery you're working at anymore? And I was like, no, I haven't been for almost 2 years. And they didn't even realize it. And I was there like 5 days a week.
Wow.
I was there all the time. And it's just because, you miss people. And so people just don't think about it. It's easy to miss people.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Super funny. So you can't bank on that necessarily to know where your regulars are. So how can you use these systems to also kind of keep track of your top guests and use that data to maybe reward them a little bit and give them perks, benefits, a gift card, hey, thanks, like something that makes them feel special because you're paying enough attention to them for them to feel special.
Also, I wanted to highlight on a word that you used is using it as a guide, because I would hate for depersonalization, right? Like, never underestimate the power of a real conversation with anyone, right? Like, if you have the opportunity because you're like, numbers are down, tips are down, shitter's not clean, maybe I should go to have a conversation with my employees, like, oh, wow, they've got anniversaries coming up, or we've got holidays coming up, maybe we need to do some sort of appreciation, or let alone with the the regulars that are coming in all the time, or a new customer, it doesn't matter, right? Like, never underestimate the power of saying hello and introducing yourself, or maybe just pouring a beer and having a conversation with them. So don't hide behind it, right? Where I think that's that love-hate relationship, right? Like, don't just rely on technology or a software system or somebody else to do your fucking job, right? Have a conversation, be a human being.
Being a human being goes a long way.
Yeah, that's my tangent.
I love it. That was very nice. Very nice.
Really gets me fired up.
Really gets me fired up.
Yeah, so it seems like it can be a bit of a mixed barrel, so to speak. So sometimes information is being utilized, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. I feel like that is just life, right? Depending on your motivation of the day, right? Everybody, we hope, especially in successful businesses or those that want to be successful, adhere to their goals and objectives, right? So they have strategic steps, actionable steps that they're following to achieve those goals. So it'd be interesting what the data says, right? And maybe we get some comments out of it, what people are doing. Maybe they're like, yeah, duh, we're doing that. Or maybe they're like, I never thought to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is the amount of data that's, I'm sure, going to be in this article and what you can come up with can be really overwhelming.
Do you even know what to do with it?
Yeah, do you know what to do with it? And I would say,
we're happy to help. Call us anytime.
Also, just in general, what are your main goals like of the year, quarter, whatever it is, and then find a couple metrics. Maybe have 3 goals and 2 metrics on each goal, something along those lines, and then just focus on those for 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, so it's not so overwhelming. And use those metrics to like move forward. And maybe you got to reach out to some other brewers and figure out which metrics they're using the most.
There's a lot of really great groups out there, support groups.
So that's where I would say to try to keep it from being overwhelming, because we could talk about this forever, and we just hit on how to get your beers, how to like optimize your beers, regulars, and your staffing on just a couple metrics.
Yeah.
And if those are where you need to focus, that's where you need to focus. And that's fine. But to not be overwhelmed, just keep it simple.
Yep.
Have a couple goals and use a couple data points to move forward.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
Well done.
Yeah. Well, main segment completed.
I guess that brew's over.